Welcome back, everybody, to the 2017 Pokemon North American International Championships here in the Video Game Championship Tournament. My name is Dweeha, and joining me at the desk, of course, is the, three-time world champion, Ray Rizzo, right?
That's a little less energetic than Evan's intro, but...
Former three-time world champion.
Yes. I'm washed up now.
Yeah,
that's why I'm up here.
That's why you're back here with me.
That's right.
Right? Well, like I said, we started with 400 players yesterday. Now we're down to only 36 that moved on to day 2. And, well, we're slowly whittling away.
Just like that last match, slowly whittling away. That was a really fun match for me to watch because I love that defensive, more stally play. I mean, it lasted about... it went all the way to time, or just about, so that was a really fun match for me to watch personally, but it was very long and grueling for both players, I'm sure, because they were making a whole bunch of switches, a whole bunch of predictions.
It was so mentally draining for everybody to watch, and that's only how it is if... you're watching it. You think that it's mentally draining when you're just watching it, trying to plan everything that's going to happen. But if you're the player just sitting there, especially if your term life is on the line, that's just so much more mentally draining.
And they still have a couple more matches to play, so you can imagine how they're feeling because that was such a long, drawn-out match and so mentally draining, just constantly having to make these high-level predictions each and every turn that lasted just about 50 minutes.
Oh, yeah. I was actually kind of thinking in the back of my head that a possible sudden death situation could have occurred if Game 2 just went on just a little bit longer.
Oh, yeah, they were very close to a sudden death situation.
Yeah. Anyways, I believe Snorlax is actually your favorite Pokemon, isn't it?
Snorlax is, but unfortunately this format's variation of Snorlax is a little bit annoying to go up against because it's so tough to take down. It's so powerful. It can boost its stats with Curse or Stockpile, as we saw, Belly Drum. Snorlax is just so difficult to take out, and it dishes out so much damage. It's really annoying to go up against, but...
I mean, it's kind of like a throwback to Red, Blue, Yellow Snorlax. It's always in the way. You have to find a way to clear it in order to move on, right? In this case, Arcel, that roadblock was that Snorlax. So, we're ready now to jump into round 13.
Yeah, we should have a really exciting match here. The players are fighting for their tournament lives just about. They're nearing the end of Day 2 Swiss, and they're trying to move on to the top cut, as we see the players there.
Yep, on your left is going to be Riley Factura. On your right is going to be Christopher Kahn. Riley Factura, a multiple regional champion. He had a very great run last year. I believe he might have won a regional championship this year. Or actually, I don't think he has, but he's always finished consistently near the top. On the other side, of course, Christopher Kahn coming from Australia. He has accomplishments that I know about in a different game called the Pokemon Trading Card game.
Tell us about that.
He is the 2011 Senior Division World Champion in the Trading Card game, and now he's made his transition over to the video game.
So it's Christopher the reverse Sagen. He is switching from Trading Card to video game, trying to become the World Champion this year, and achieving the goal of World Champion in both games.
I guess. We'll have to see who beats that race first, Sagen Park or Christopher Kahn, become a dual world champion. Going into team preview, Riley on your left with Tapu Koko, Muck in its Alolan form, Pelipper, Golduck, Porygon 2, and Hariyama. On the right, Christopher running Porygon 2, Tapu Koko, Gyarados, Arcanine, Garchomp, and Snorlax.
Yeah, it's really interesting here seeing Christopher's kind of hybrid style of team. He's got the Trick Room mode, the really bulky normal types in Porygon 2 and Snorlax, and then the more faster Garchomp, Tapu Koko. He's also got 2 Intimidates, but usually those dual normal types, the Porygon 2 and Snorlax combination, don't fare very well against fighting types, especially a slow one like Hariyama that can really take advantage of Trick Room. So it's going to be really interesting to see how Riley utilizes the Hariyama in this matchup. Muck is also very strong against that combination. You can knock off the Eviolite from Porygon, knock off that Bury from Snorlax so that it can't recycle it again. It's going to be a really interesting match to see how this plays out. Perhaps Christopher doesn't even go for the Porygon 2 and Snorlax.
Yeah, I mean, even then, Gyarados, Garchomp, Tapu Koko, and Arcanine already a very solid 4 Pokemon to be able to bring. Has a lot of offensive, has a lot of good synergy between each other, and can also switch in and out really well.
The only thing is Arcanine in this matchup doesn't look like it has a very favorable matchup against any Pokemon, so I'm sure we still see at least one of Porygon 2 and Snorlax, but it's something you do have to watch out for, that Hariyama on Riley's side.
Porygon 2 is a good counter option if Riley does try to go for that Swift Swim mode with the Double Duck, with the Pelipper and the Golduck, but we're ready to get underway here in Swiss round 13 between these two amazing players. Gyarados and Garchomp are the leads that Christopher Kahn decides to lead with, and Riley Factura are going to lead with Alolan Muck and Tapu Koko. Tapu Koko is going to go ahead and bring out the Electric Surge, and of course Gyarados does have access to Intimidate and is going to be intimidating that Muck most importantly.
Yeah, the Intimidate will help against Muck, but Garchomp is in a great position here, can freely fire off an Earthquake onto both Muck and Tapu Koko, doing super effective damage to both. Depending on how what kind of set the Garchomp is running, if it's Tectonic Rage, if it's Assault Vest, able to take a Dazzling Gleam from Tapu Koko, or if it's Tectonic Rage, it could just straight up go for a one-hit KO onto Muck, because an Earthquake probably isn't going to take out Muck, because Muck is just so bulky. Gyarados definitely has to watch out for Tapu Koko, but you are threatening it with the Garchomp, but it just seems a little too risky to have Gyarados go for an attack here. I think it's going to have to protect, maybe switch out, but probably protect to let Garchomp fire off an Earthquake.
And now it looks like Riley has locked in his move. Muck is going to switch out, going to save that Muck for a little bit later. Going to switch into Porygon 2 here, which can take that Earthquake a lot better. Thanks to that Eviolite, we do now notice that Porygon 2 gets a download boost here, going to boost its attack, and Tapu Koko going to protect and not going to take any damage at all. Gyarados also scared here, going to follow in suit with a Protect, as Garchomp gets to go for a move and using Earthquake, so going to do some damage to that Porygon 2 here.
Yeah, really good Protect by the Tapu Koko there.
Yep, and here the Earthquake comes out, gonna hit that Porygon 2, gonna do very little damage.
Yeah, Porygon 2 is just so bulky, but this turn, since Gyarados just protected, Tapu Koko can freely go for a Volt Switch into that Gyarados slot, get away from the Garchomp's Earthquake, and reposition the board, because Porygon 2 is threatening Garchomp with an Ice Beam, so even if Garchomp elects to stay in and goes for an Earthquake, it's really got to be scared of an Ice Beam, and Gyarados can't stay in against a Volt Switch, so I really like the play of just stay safe, go for a Volt Switch onto the Gyarados slot, go for an Ice Beam onto Garchomp.
Yep, and Christopher Kahn forced to retreat his Gyarados, not going to want to stay in. A good switch right here from that Porygon 2. Again, such a bulky Pokemon should take that full switch much better. And it actually gets a special attack boost there, so kind of a rare thing to see these days, as Tapu Koko on Riley's side using Volt Switch here, hitting that Porygon 2, boosted by that Electric Terrain, going to switch right back out, and now Riley gets to switch one Pokemon in and maintain some momentum.
Yeah, he gets to reposition his board here. We'll see what his last Pokemon is. Muck, probably don't want to bring it in here against a potential Earthquake, because Porygon 2 is very bulky. Maybe Christopher decided to Earthquake himself. You don't know. Sometimes players do elect to do that, since Porygon 2 has Recover and is just so bulky. But we will see.
Yeah, and Riley now has to take his time to try to decide exactly what he wants to be able to switch in. Pelipper switching in here, going to be able to take that Earthquake for sure. Also going to be bringing the Drizzle ability and bringing the Rain here on this Electric Terrain already. So now Garchomp's going to get to move, going to go for yet another Earthquake. Does not affect Pelipper. Does Earthquake his own Porygon 2, just like you called it, Ray. Going to do damage to both Porygon 2s on the field. Not much damage has been done at all, as Riley's Porygon 2 now using Ice Beam onto that Garchomp. Garchomps are usually trained to survive Porygon 2 Ice Beams.
Yeah, but usually they do much more than that, so that does reveal that that is a potential Assault Vest on the Garchomp just based off the damage. And it was very interesting because we saw Christopher's Porygon 2 get a special attack boost when it came in against the Tapu Koko and Porygon 2, and we see just how much damage Earthquake is doing to Riley's Porygon 2. It's clearly trained very heavily in physical defense, so that is one piece of information Christopher can take from this, that the Porygon 2 is most likely focused more on taking physical attacks rather than special attacks.
Alright, now moving into this turn here, the Pelipper seems like it could be pretty safe, although Porygon 2s do tend to carry Thunderbolts, electric type attacks, as Tapu Koko switching in for the Garchomp here, revealing that it is the shiny Tapu Koko, which means that it is going to be locked into a Timid nature, as Gyarados is also going to take the field as well here. Going to go for Intimidate, but it's not going to matter too much. Both Pokemon on Riley's side are known to be special attackers, except for the rare, return Porygon 2, as Pelipper using Brine here, but because Gyarados was at full health, it's not going to do that much damage just yet, with a critical hit though. And now an Ice Beam hitting into that Gyarados slot, doing a decent amount of damage, bringing it down to a little under 50%.
Yeah, clearly Riley was looking to pick up the KO there on Porygon 2 before it could get the chance to recover. But Christopher makes a great switch and brings in Gyarados to take those 2 hits, and then Tapu Koko comes in for free, which definitely threatens the Pelipper. And if it elects to attack Porygon 2, we saw maybe Porygon 2 isn't trained as much in special defense as some other Porygon 2s, so a Tapu Koko could do a lot of damage to Porygon 2 if Christopher decides to attack that slot, predicting Pelipper to either protect or switch out.
Yeah, both these players already do have their Worlds invites, I believe. Both of them are pretty high-ranking players in their own respective regions. So it's going to be an intense battle. Maybe just a little small preview of the World Championships. As now Riley going to go ahead and activate the Z. No, sorry, it's going to be Christopher activating the Z move here. Going to be using the Gigavolt Havoc and going to be doing a massive amount of damage to a Pokemon over on Riley's side of the field. Easily a one-hit KO, barring a Focus Sash on the Pelipper on the other side. But also a lot of damage can be dealt to that Porygon 2 on its weaker special defense side here. What's it going to go towards? The Porygon 2! Going to be a lot of damage here, and it is enough to pick up the KO from where that Porygon 2 was.
Yeah, Porygon 2s almost never have Protect, so that was a really nice attacking slot by Christopher going for that Porygon 2.
Oh, and that Waterfall actually does a lot of damage. Pelipper does not flinch. Pelipper using Tailwind here. So now Riley does have speed control up on his side of the field.
Yeah, that is one benefit. Riley will have the speed control because we know he's got Tapu Koko in the back, which threatens Gyarados, and even Christopher's Tapu Koko. Pelipper can do a surprisingly amount of damage to it just because of Tapu Koko not being that bulky, and Pelipper likely trained in a lot of special attack. And even so, Pelipper did its job. It actually took a hit from that Gyarados, dealing less than half, and then it set up Tailwind. So Pelipper in a good spot here. It did its job. The rest is up to the remaining Pokemon of Riley. And Pelipper, hopefully he can get one more attack in thanks to Tailwind. It likely will be able to before it goes down. I'd say Pelipper did a good job here.
Usually Pelipper sets up one Tailwind and then it kind of just maybe tries to go for one attack if it still can. But
this game, it looks like it's going to get off a total of 2 attacks and a Tailwind, so that's pretty good for Pelipper.
Yeah, of course, we do know that the Pelipper has Brine, which does more damage once the Pokemon is under 50%. Gyarados here just going to be knocked out. Christopher not wanting to try to play the switching game at all. Does not also want to maybe make an unsafe switch right there as Tapu Koko gonna switch back out, as Riley gonna be forced to switch in his Pokemon in the back, which is, yes, the Muck. We've already seen the Muck.
Yeah, and Muck has a great matchup against Tapu Koko.
Yep, Pelipper now using Brine here, gonna hit that Tapu Koko in the rain, doing a lot of damage, even almost picking up the one-hit KO, as Tapu Koko using Dazzling Gleam here does not pick up the KO on the Pelipper, so Pelipper gets to go for yet another move, possibly.
Yeah, and it'll be interesting to see how the Muck is trained. You can actually train Muck so that it can outspeed Tapu Koko and Tailwind, but that does require quite a bit of training and speed. Not sure if Riley has elected to do that, but either way, Muck will be faster than Porygon 2, can go for a knockoff in that slot, and just, it may not pick up the KO, but it'll knock off the Eviolite, making Porygon 2 a whole lot less useful this match. And Tapu Koko is in KO range from a Brine from Pelipper, and thanks to Tailwind, Pelipper will outspeed it, so Riley's in a great spot here.
Yeah, Riley in a great spot to seal up Game 1 here of Swiss Round 13 here in Day 2 of the 2017 North American International Championship. So, great positioning from Riley right there. Christopher's going to have to find a way to dig his way out of here as Pelipper again outspeeding, going for a Brine and picking up a KO on that Tapu Koko in the rain. This Pelipper is putting in so much work for Riley's side as Muck, using this turn to use knockoff here, going to hit that Porygon 2, and it's just straight up picks up the KO with a critical hit right there. Well, going to knock off the Eviolite, so that's information revealed, although most likely it's going to be carrying it anyways, as the rain does stop.
Yeah, the critical hit was probably necessary to pick up that knockout, but knocking off the Eviolite, even if Porygon 2 did hang in, probably wouldn't have been able to do much from there on out. I would have liked to see Tapu Koko go for a Thunderbolt on Pelipper rather than a Dazzling Gleam a couple turns ago, just to guarantee that knockout, because Garchomp can come in and against a Muck, against a Tapu Koko, may be able to pick up a double knockout with Earthquake, especially if it has Assault Vest. It may be able to take Dazzling Gleam, depending on how it's trained, but
yeah, instead, Pelipper using Brine here on that Garchomp. It is not enough to pick up the KO. Garchomp now using Earthquake, going to see how much damage this does exactly to that Muck. It is most likely going to be a... Oh, it just picks up the KO right there. So big damage right there from that Muck. So good information for Christopher Kahn to have coming into the next game.
Yeah, he knows he's only going to have to chip Muck a little bit in order to put it in Earthquake KO range. So that is good knowledge for Christopher to take into Game 2.
Yep, Tapu Koko now coming back in, does have access to moves that can pick up the KO on this Garchomp because, you know, it's at such low health. It does carry the Assault Vest, like you said, from the amount of, like, you know, just how much it's hung on from taking special attacks.
Yeah, but unfortunately it's at too low HP. It's going to get outsped by Tapu Koko, and Assault Vest won't be able to let it take this Dazzling Gleam.
Unless it was Bright Powder.
Unless it's Bright Powder.
A little throwback right there, right, Ray?
Yeah, nobody likes that.
Riley Factura takes Game 1 here in Swiss Round 13 versus Christopher Kahn. big matchup between two amazing players, like I've already said. Now going into Game 2, Christopher Kahn's going to have to find some adjustments to make.
Yeah, I think for Christopher to adjust here, Garchomp looks like it's going to be key. It was so good against Muck. It's so good against Tapu Koko, and we know it has Assault Vest, so it's going to be able to take all these special attacks that Riley's throwing at it a lot better than typical Garchomps. I would have liked it to... I thought Garchomp was going to do a lot more damage in this match than it ended up doing. It just ended up taking Ice Beams, not doing a whole lot of damage. Pelipper got to come in for free. Its Earthquake ended up hurting its own Porygon 2 more than the enemy. I would have liked to see Garchomp just be positioned a little better to take advantage of Riley's two Pokemon that he brought that were both heavily weak to ground moves.
Yeah, and in the face of it, in that Garchomp, you know, he just fixed his board position so well with just a simple switch.
Yeah, maybe in the next game he could figure on trading Gyarados in order to guarantee an Earthquake off, so that if Tapu Koko does decide to stay in and attack Gyarados, Garchomp's going to get an attack off. Though, of course, you still have to watch out for Volt Switch, because then it'll hit Gyarados and be able to switch out. So, but if it's against something like Thunderbolt from Tapu Koko, then you can elect to trade Gyarados. But considering we've already seen Volt Switch revealed, probably not safe to do that. But I'd like to see Tapu Koko be prioritized by Christopher. I would like to see him focus on it, make sure he takes it out, because that just put in a lot of work that last match. We saw how much damage it can do, and just being faster than everything on Christopher's team, was always able to clean up in the back if it was needed.
Here we are getting ready to head into Game 2 right now. We'll have to see how these players have adjusted here, as it looks like Chris is ready to send out his Pokemon on his side of the field. Riley going to lead with Tapu Koko and Porygon 2. Christopher going to be leading with Snorlax and the Garchomp. So changing it up, bringing that Snorlax.
I really like this adjustment. Snorlax, if it can get set up, can become really difficult to take out, as we've seen throughout this entire tournament. And Garchomp provides a threat to this Tapu Koko, so that if Tapu Koko decides to stay in and attack Snorlax, it's really facing a very strong threat that is capable of one-hit KOing it. And we know Garchomp, with the Assault Vest, is going to be able to take an Ice Beam from Porygon, and maybe a combination of an Ice Beam and Dazzling Gleam. It'll depend entirely on how that Garchomp is trained. But either way, even if Garchomp gets double targeted, Snorlax is going to get a turn here to set up. So I really like this adjustment by Christopher.
All right, getting ready to get underway here in turn 1 of Game 2. Snorlax can begin setting up. You know, it's also going to come down to what kind of variant this Snorlax is. You know, we've seen many variants of Snorlax. Curse, we've seen Stockpile, combined with the Belly Drum to set up. Now, Christopher Kahn going to withdraw his Garchomp, going to switch into Porygon 2, maybe expecting a Trick Room to possibly come up and trying to function a little bit better in that Trick Room. As Tapu Koko using Volt Switch here, going to hit that Snorlax and allow Tapu Koko to switch out. So maybe Christopher also maybe predicting that Tapu Koko to be switching out anyways and avoiding it, and maybe trying to get a little bit better of a matchup. Now Riley gets to adjust, though, to that Porygon 2 switch in. Yeah,
considering he's taken a bit of time thinking here, he probably doesn't have Hariyama in the back, because that would just be an instant click. You'd want to get Hariyama in there against two normal types. So this will be a really interesting adjustment. Christopher electing to bring both his normal types against Riley's Hariyama. We'll see if Riley ended up bringing it, because if he didn't, Christopher could be in a good spot here to get Trick Room up, get Snorlax set up. But Snorlax, depending on its set, if it's something like Curse, it won't be able to boost its special defense, and we see Riley has a bunch of really powerful special attackers that are able to do a lot of damage to Snorlax.
And Pelipper seems like it is one from the amount of damage that I was doing last game. And Porygon 2 now using Toxic here, going to go ahead and badly poison the Snorlax over on Christopher's side. That's going to go ahead and put a timer on it, so it cannot stay on the field as long as it really wants to. The Curse does set up here. It is going to be setting up here. Going to drop its speed, going to be increasing its attack, and also going to be increasing its defense as well. And it is not enough in terms of poison damage to activate Snorlax's Berry.
Yeah, so that is big. Snorlax won't be able to recover 50% of its HP. It'll be really interesting to see which normal type move Snorlax elected for, because we have seen throughout this tournament some Snorlaxes decide to go for the Facade to take advantage of one of its few weaknesses, Toxic. That way Facade will get even increased power and just deal so much damage, especially after a Curse. So we'll see which normal type move did Christopher opt for.
Pelipper on Riley's side now, protecting. Not going to want to get hit with any move just yet. Porygon 2 on Riley's side, again content on just Toxic using Toxic to poison down Christopher's side of the field and start setting up for an end game where he just has to wait it out. And it looks like Snorlax has Facade here with the curse, going to hit that Porygon 2, doubled up in power because it's poison, as Porygon 2 sets up a Trick Room. So good position right now for Christopher Khan.
Yeah, really good turn for Christopher there. This is going to activate his berry, healing Snorlax up. He got Trick Room set up for his Snorlax, and Riley's Porygon 2 is in KO range from another Facade, and Snorlax is now faster than Porygon, so it can KO it before it even sets a Recover up, healing all of its HP. Now, he does have the ticking time bomb of Toxic on both of his really bulky Pokemon, so he does have a time limit here that he's really going to have to win this match in quick order, or else Toxic is just going to take out 2 of his Pokemon.
Yeah, and Christopher's going to have to take advantage of this Trick Room as well. There's only 4 more turns of Trick Room after the turn you set it up, so it's going to be a game of managing your turns well for Christopher.
Yeah, but he's in a good spot here. He can just Facade on the Porygon 2 and then have his own Porygon 2 attack Pelipper, break the potential Focus Sash, and do a lot of damage to it. And Riley, we figure his Porygon 2 isn't going to have Protect. It's not going to be able to protect itself this turn. He probably doesn't have any safe switch-ins to a Facade.
Yep, and it looks like now Snorlax using Facade here on that Porygon 2. Going to go ahead and pick up the KO easily from there, and now it's going to come down to Porygon 2 on Christopher's side, using Ice Beam here, breaking the possible Focus Sash on that Pelipper, doing a good amount of damage. Pelipper now using Hurricane here, going to hit that Porygon 2.
This can confuse.
A good amount of damage. It does confuse. So Porygon 2 now becomes confused, and you know, confusion isn't exactly a status that you ever want to see on your Pokemon.
No, and we've seen back in the day, confusion, it can be devastating, but fortunately for Christopher, confusion doesn't have the same likelihood as back then of attacking yourself, so it's only going to be a 33% chance he does that, but you still never want to see confusion. It just makes the game so nerve-wracking.
Yeah, you always seem to hit yourself in confusion when you need to not hit yourself in confusion. Muck is going to go ahead and take the field for Riley here, going to be able to threaten knockoffs on Porygon 2, and also maybe knock off that berry on Snorlax if it really tries to recycle it.
Yeah, but if I'm Christopher, I don't even go for the recycle because of the knockoff. I'm on a, I've got a time limit here with Toxic, with the Trick Room turns. I'm just going to go offensive, get some attacks off, and we see Riley protecting, trying to stall that out.
Muck using Protect here, as Pelipper also using Protect here to stall out one more turn of Toxic and also yet another turn of Trick Room. Snorlax now using Facade here, going to hit into that Muck Protect, and Porygon 2 confused. Can it even move in the first place? It does, and it goes for an Ice Beam into that Pelipper. So Riley right now really just trying to stall out the Poison, stalling out the Trick Room on both Pokemon.
Yeah, but he doesn't really have too many safe switch, and Snorlax again can go for a Facade onto Muck, threatening a lot of damage, though Muck does have the Berry, so it will be able to heal that all off. But when Trick Room ends, Christopher may have some faster Pokemon in the back. We know he's got Tapu Koko, so even when Trick Room ends, Christopher might still be in a pretty good spot.
Yeah, I believe in the back, we know that Gyarados is in the back for Christopher's side, right?
I believe so.
Yeah, I think so. So, now, well, no, it was Garchomp.
Yeah, we saw Garchomp.
We saw Garchomp. We don't know what the fourth
Garchomp
Pokemon
switched out. We don't know what the last one is, but
it was Garchomp. It was.
I wouldn't be surprised if it's Tapu Koko against this Rain team.
Yeah, you need to have something to be able to deal with Rain, right? Now, it looks like the turn is starting here. Pelipper going to switch out on Riley's side. Tapu Koko is going to go ahead and hit the field to try to stay in, as Snorlax using Facade here. Going to go ahead and hit that Muck for a lot of damage, and straight up picks up the one-hit KO. So big damage from that Snorlax as Porygon 2 snaps out of confusion and uses Ice Beam to hit that Tapu Koko. So again, just doing as much damage as he possibly can. The Rain is going to stop. Pelipper is going to come back in and reset the Rain. As Snorlax hangs on, and there's still going to be, I believe, one more turn of Trick Room. But you can easily just double protect here.
Yeah, and even when Trick Room runs out, Christopher's slow Pokemon, his Trick Room mode of Snorlax and Porygon 2 may go down and Trick Room may end, but then that's when his fast Pokemon are going to come in. Garchomp still at full HP, has the Assault Vest. Pelipper's already has its Focus Sash broken, down below half HP. Christopher in a great spot to take this second game and bring us to a Game 3.
Yeah, good board position. Great adjustments here from Christopher Khan.
Yeah, he adjusted really well. I love that he brought Snorlax as a lead there. I think he was able to get such momentum there. gets set up with just one curse, and then that Toxic ended up backfiring on Riley. He ended up putting Snorlax into it turned it into such a monster, even powerful enough to one-hit KO Muck, which is known for being such a bulky Pokemon.
Yeah, and we actually, behind the desk, thought that the Muck would hang on and actually just eat its berry, but instead it just got one-hit KO'd by that Facade.
And we were a little surprised at that Earthquake damage, too, in Game 1, seeing Muck get KO'd when we thought maybe it would survive, so maybe this is a really offensively trained Muck instead.
Yeah, and there's no Protects coming out onto the field. Snorlax gets one more KO onto that Pelipper as Porygon 2 now using Ice Beam to hit that Tapu Koko, and that is going to be doing it. Yep, there it is. Christopher Khan takes Game 2 here of Swiss Round 13, so now it is 1-1. Riley Factura versus Christopher Khan, multiple regional championships between Riley Factura and, of course, Christopher Khan, the former world champion in the trading card game in 2011 in the seniors division. So this is going to come down to the wire here.
Yeah, now Riley's going to be the one who's going to have to adjust. You have to wonder if he looks towards his own Hariyama after seeing how much work Snorlax put in, as well as the Porygon 2. They just hung around for a while, got set up, just became such difficult threats to take out, and I figure you don't want to Toxic Snorlax again this game because you saw the Facade. It's a little risky. Maybe instead go for the Hariyama, but we'll have to see what Riley decides to do to adjust.
Yep. If you believe that Christopher Khan is going to go again for the Trick Room mode, definitely allowing Hariyama to come in and dealing with Snorlax and Porygon 2 would definitely help out.
Yeah, and you figure Arcanine's not going to come in because Arcanine's just really bad against Riley's, pretty much his entire team. So there's one Intimidator you don't have to worry about. Gyarados is definitely a possibility for Christopher to bring, and Hariyama doesn't really have a good matchup against that, but against Porygon 2, against the Snorlax, it's got a fantastic matchup. It's bulky enough where it can take a Dazzling Gleam from Tapu Koko, it can take an attack from Garchomp, and depending on what its moveset is, may be able to dish out a lot of damage in return to those two Pokemon.
Yeah, and now the players have to think about what exactly they want to do here coming into Game 3. Is that Hariyama going to come out for Riley's side? Is Chris going to come up with anything that he needs to make adjustments to in Game 3 to try to kind of predict Riley's adjustments?
Yeah, I think you want to have more of an answer to Snorlax because we saw just how dangerous it can be. That's why I really look towards Hariyama there. Maybe he decides to go for Pelipper Golduck, put himself into a really, really offensive position, exert a lot of pressure onto Christopher. Golduck known for dealing so much damage in the rain if it has that Z move. There's a way to just deal almost all of Snorlax's HP in one turn.
Yeah, all right. Well, here we are, getting ready to get underway here in Game 3 between Riley Factura and Christopher Khan. And this is going to be an exciting Game 3. Both players have been playing very hyper-offensively here. I mean, pretty much setting up that Snorlax sealed the deal for Chris in Game 2. Riley, of course, just kind of blowing through all of Chris's team with his offensive threats in Game 1. So Tapu Koko and Muck are the leads that Riley opts for here in Game 3. Tapu Koko and Porygon 2 are the leads that Christopher here decides to go with here in this deciding game.
Yeah, nice adjustment going back to Muck. In case the Snorlax was a lead from Christopher, you do have that knockoff threat. But again, we did see Garchomp get led before. It's unfortunate that Christopher decided to stay away from that and not lead Garchomp again, because Garchomp right here would have a great matchup against the Muck and the Tapu Koko. But with Christopher's own Tapu Koko, we know that has a lot of damage. It can threaten a KO onto Muck. And Porygon 2, you don't want to get knocked off. Eviolite is such an important item for Porygon 2. Maybe Christopher decides to switch it out, preserve Porygon for later, maybe bring in Garchomp in that slot. We'll have to see.
Tapu Koko on Christopher's side now, protecting. Not going to want to get any damage at all done to it, as Muck using this turn to protect as well. Not going to want to take a powerful electric type attack possibly. Tapu Koko Volt switching into that Tapu Koko slot over on Christopher's side, and Christopher revealing that he has returned. So it's going to be that physical Porygon to take advantage of physical attack stat boosts.
Yeah, that means it also probably doesn't have Thunderbolt, so it won't be able to take advantage of the electric terrain, but Return, if you get the attack boost onto Porygon, Return can do a lot of damage thanks to the same type attack bonus.
Yeah, and we actually haven't seen a Z move yet come out in this match. Not from Riley's side, not from Christopher's side, so the Z move could still be kind of anywhere.
Yeah, and I expect Porygon 2, I think this is the turn. You want to switch it out to Garchomp, have Tapu Koko fire an attack off into the Muck slot, and try and pick up a KO. And we did see in the previous game, Tapu Koko did use a Z move on Porygon 2 and dealt a lot of damage, so Riley is aware of that. That's likely why he protected Muck, a little scared of that Z move from Christopher's Tapu Koko.
And Tapu Koko over on Chris's side, going to switch out, going to switch into Garchomp to possibly take a Volt Switch a lot better, but instead Riley changing it up and going for a Volt Switch here into the Porygon 2. Boosted by the Life Orb, boosted by the Electric Terrain, and now Riley gets a switch to adjust to that Garchomp switch in.
Yeah, I think I would have liked to see the reverse done. Have Porygon switch out into Garchomp and Tapu Koko, fire off an Electrium Z into the Muck, try and pick up the KO there. Because we saw Muck just protected the previous turn.
Yeah, and I don't think anything can come in on Riley's side that would enjoy taking that possible Gigavolt Havoc, as Porygon 2's return does a lot of damage here, almost activating Muck's Berry from that Gluttony range as Muck goes for a Gunk Shot into that Garchomp slot right there. Not very effective, but it's still Muck's most damaging move.
Yep, still a really good switch-in. Luckily, that Muck didn't go for a knockoff on Christopher's, and because knockoff on that Porygon 2 slot would have made Porygon 2 very vulnerable for the remainder of this match. Garchomp does get to come in relatively for free and threaten an Earthquake onto Muck, and Porygon 2 can take Earthquakes pretty well, so it can recover off the damage, and we know Garchomp has the Assault Vest, so it is able to take an Ice Beam from Riley's Porygon, but maybe we just see Muck go for another Protect and see Porygon fire off an Ice Beam onto Garchomp, or maybe even go for a Toxic onto Christopher's Porygon, try and whittle it down, but I'd expect him to go for the Ice Beam onto the Garchomp, knowing that it can't protect since it's Assault Vest.
Yep, and Muck now protecting, not going to want to get KO just yet. Garchomp again content to Earthquake into Chris's own Porygon 2. Some of the plays that you have to make at high level plays is attacking your own Pokemon. Like you said earlier, Porygon 2 does not mind it so much because Porygon can easily just recover off that damage as well, which is what Chris's Porygon 2 decides to do this turn. Now Riley's Porygon 2 is going to be able to move using Ice Beam here. Going to connect on the Garchomp. It is now had some chip damage done to it, and Garchomp still hangs on, again, thanks to that Assault Vest boosting its special defenses.
Yep, so Assault Vest really paying dividends in this match. We see Garchomp barely hanging on from these really powerful special attacks, and it'll be interesting to see if Muck switches out this turn, maybe to something like a Pelipper to take a predicted Earthquake, unless Riley decides to just trade Muck for the Garchomp and just keep Muck in, have Porygon take out Garchomp in exchange, and then your Tapu Koko is even safer. Your Porygon 2 can eventually fire off Toxics onto Christopher's Porygon 2 and win that kind of stall war. But we'll have to see what Riley likes to do with this Muck.
Yeah, it's going to be a tough decision here for Riley. It's always a mind game as to what to do.
Yeah, with Muck being pretty low, maybe he does elect to just sacrifice it, especially if he didn't bring Pelipper in the back, because then you don't really have safe switch-ins to Garchomp, but we do see it switch out, and there is the Pelipper, so that is a safe switch-in.
So Pelipper coming in to possibly take an Earthquake a lot better. It is also safe because Christopher Kahn's Porygon 2 most likely does not have that Thunderbolt because it opted for Return for coverage instead. Garchomp using Dragon Claw here, going to hit that Pelipper, breaking the possible Focus Sash here as Porygon 2 also using Return. Going to be able to pick up the KO on that Pelipper, so a Pokemon that gave Chris a lot of trouble in Game 1 has been knocked out. Yeah,
really good prediction there from Christopher, expecting Pelipper to have been brought like it was in the previous 2 games, and decided to fire off a double target into that slot, guaranteeing the KO. If Muck decided to stay in, he probably would have picked up the KO with the combination of those two attacks, and if Pelipper comes in, you're still picking up the KO. So really good play by Christopher there, adjusting, and Riley gets Trick Room up, but it'll be interesting to see how much this really helps him.
Yeah, and now Muck has to come back in. Trick Room is up, so this Garchomp is threatened to be KO'd right here. Of course, one more attack into that Muck from that Porygon 2 should actually be able to activate that Berry, although it will be a bit close.
Yeah, and Muck should at least get a knockoff before it gets attacked by Christopher's Porygon, so you have to imagine Porygon 2 goes for an Ice Beam into the Garchomp slot, and Muck goes for a knockoff onto Porygon, weakening that, but as soon as Muck goes down, you're stuck with Porygon 2 and Tapu Koko. Tapu Koko not too good in Trick Room, and we don't know yet if Christopher brought his Snorlax to take advantage of this Trick Room. That would be devastating if Riley set up Trick Room for Christopher's Snorlax.
Muck now using knockoff here, going to hit that Porygon 2, going to knock off that Eviolite as Porygon 2 using Return on the opposing Porygon 2 on Riley's side, as Porygon 2 on Riley's side now using Ice Beam, and that is going to be the KO on that Garchomp. So Garchomp with that Assault Vest, not enough to take on 2 Ice Beams.
Yeah, and it was clear there Christopher looked like he did not want to attack the Muck for fear of triggering its Berry, or maybe he predicted Muck to protect, but in all likelihood he probably didn't want to trigger that Berry by attacking it, so...
Ooh, Snorlax does come back out here, so...
There's the Snorlax, so now Snorlax can try and pick up the KO onto Muck, since it will move first thanks to Trick Room that Riley set up for Christopher Snorlax.
Yeah, now Muck will still need some help in order to be able, or sorry, Snorlax will still need some help in order to pick up the KO on the Muck. Beforehand, he needed the Curse and the Poison for the Facade to be able to pick up the KO, although Snorlax does also have access to high horsepower.
Yeah, and we saw Muck go down a little easily the previous times it got attacked, so maybe this Muck isn't that defensively trained, so maybe a high horsepower is going to pick up the KO here onto this Muck, and that's why Christopher brought it in and decided not to trigger Muck's Berry the previous turn. That would make perfect sense if he does have high horsepower.
And of course, the Pokemon in the back for Riley is that Tapu Koko as well, so that's not exactly a great switch. And right now, Christopher's Porygon 2 is going to switch out, going to go into Tapu Koko of his own. It looks like Riley is slightly reacting to that as Tapu Koko on Christopher's side going to go ahead and bring out the Electric Terrain. Now Muck on Riley's side protects itself, not going to want to get KO'd just yet, as Snorlax using high horsepower into that Protect. As Porygon 2 using its turn to reverse Trick Room.
Yeah, but great play by Christopher there. He knew that was the only out that Riley had, protecting Muck and reversing Trick Room, so he brings in Tapu Koko. That way, if Riley does decide to do that, Tapu Koko is now the fastest thing on the field and still threatening the KO onto Muck, which is really the only way Riley is going to be able to deal with this Snorlax.
Amazing switch right there from Christopher, and it really just came down to mind games and thinking about all the outs that the opponent has and how I can counter that.
Yeah, it was just the safest play too by Christopher. He wasn't at risk for anything because if Muck decided not to protect, Snorlax is going to pick up the KO with a potential high horsepower, which he did show he does have. So there was really no risk there other than high horsepower maybe missing and Muck going for an attack into that Tapu Koko slot.
Yep, and here it is. Time is winding down on Riley's clock here as both players lock in their moves, and Gigavolt Havoc is going to come out from Tapu Koko here. It is going to be the KO on the Monk if it targets down the KO, and it will even be the KO on Porygon 2 most likely as well.
Yep, so either one Christopher is able to pick up the KO on, but at this point, I don't even know if it matters which one he chooses. He should win this match either way, but...
Yep, and here it is, the Gigavolt Havoc targeting that Porygon 2, going to save that Muck for the Snorlax, just going to go for a high horsepower into that slot. Even if the Berry gets knocked off, of course, Chris still has a lot of options in the back to deal with the Tapu Koko in back for Riley's side, as it does reveal the Aguava Berry. Snorlax now connecting with that high horsepower, picking up the KO on that Mug, and now it looks like Riley is down to his last Pokemon.
Yeah, the only out there for Riley was high horsepower missing. Unfortunately for him, it connects and picks up the knockout onto Muck, and now we have Snorlax and Tapu Koko staring down a Tapu Koko on Riley's end, and there's still Porygon in the back.
Yeah, it's going to be hard to break, even if Tapu Koko hangs on, somehow deals with Tapu Koko over on Christopher's side, and the Snorlax on Christopher's side. You know, Porygon 2 can easily just come in. We've seen the Life Orb on Riley's Tapu Koko, so even then, Porygon 2 could easily just be content with just recovering back all the health that it gets damaged
yep,
with.
Especially by the time Porygon comes in, Electric Terrain will probably be over, so Tapu Koko just won't be able to do enough damage to it. It'll be able to stall it out with Recover.
Yeah, exactly.
If it even gets to that point, it shouldn't. So
yeah, Tapu Koko on Chris's side goes for a Dazzling Gleam here. Single target Dazzling Gleam as Tapu Koko on Riley's side. Revealing Thunder going to connect on to, I believe it's going to be that Snorlax. Boosted by that Electric Train is enough to pick up the KO, but another Dazzling Gleam should be enough to seal the deal here for Chris's side. Of course, more Life Orb recoil, just kind of making it a lot faster, and both players actually shake hands right there. Riley pretty much admitting defeat, and a well-played set from both players.
Yeah, very well played. We saw the adjustments made by both players, and Christopher really made some smart adjustments. I love the use of Snorlax in games 2 and 3. It was just so important. It was so bulky, so difficult to take down, and it threw out a lot of damage. And even in game 3 where Snorlax didn't do a whole lot, just the threat of it, the fact that it can take advantage of the Trick Room that Riley set up, just put Christopher in a position to really win this game.
And Christopher Kahn's Dazzling Gleam onto Riley Factura's Tapu Koko is enough to seal the deal, and Christopher Kahn moves on to 11-2 here after round 13 of Day 2 Swiss here at the 2017 North American International Championship. So well played from Christopher Kahn. Of course, he's been playing Pokemon for a very long time, so has Riley. So it's great to see two players from, well, I mean, I guess Christopher's been playing Pokemon in the trading card game for since 2011 at least. And Riley, of course, he's been around since pretty much forever. So great to see two old school players, although one is most likely just a TCG player versus a old school VGC player face off. And of course, congratulations to Christopher Kahn. Riley is still in it. He's not out just yet. So it's going to come down to whether or not he can continue to go out there and continue winning.
Yeah, and he's, like you said, he's a veteran player, so he's got that mental fortitude. He's able to, forget about this match, move on, and just play really well in the remaining matches that he has, and just leave it all out on the battlefield.
Yeah, of course, Game 1, Riley's offensive leads kind of matched up very well. Once Pelipper was able to set up a tailwind and Christopher didn't do anything to deal with that Pelipper, Pelipper kind of had free reign to be able to pick up KOs.
Yeah, but Christopher didn't let that happen. He made the adjustments, made some really smart plays, really safe plays too, especially that turn where rather than going for the Earthquake with his Garchomp, he went for the Dragon Claw and the return with Porygon. That way you cover all your bases, so if Muck stays in, yeah, you might... your return might end up going onto Muck instead of the ally, so maybe you lose a little bit of damage, but it was against a Porygon, so it was very safe going for that Dragon Claw and the return to cover the potential Pelipper switch-in.
Yeah, that was in Game 3. Game 2 was when Christopher made that adjustment to go from Snorlax into, pretty much to go from Gyarados into Snorlax.
Yeah, he hadn't even brought Snorlax in Game 1, I don't think, and it was a great adjustment in Game 2, and he even led with it, I believe, which... it just put out so much pressure because Riley didn't have an answer to it immediately, so it was able to get set up with a Curse, and then the one answer that Riley thought he had in Toxic ended up just powering up Snorlax even more thanks to the choice of Facade.
Facade is definitely an interesting choice on Snorlax. It does kind of counteract what you want to do to Snorlax. You want to either set up a Toxic in order to slowly damage it, put a counter on it, make sure that doesn't stay out on the field for a very long time, or even preventing burns from slowing down Snorlax's offensive power. So very interesting move choice, but it is a very cool tech to see on Snorlax.
Yeah, it was very interesting though because the other weakness that Snorlax has, other than burns, other than Toxics, are fighting types. And we saw Riley did have the Hariyama in that match, he just decided not to bring it. So it's interesting to see that he decided to make that choice, thought that Muck was maybe the safer play thanks to knockoff against the Snorlax, but unfortunately Muck just ended up going down a little easier than maybe we anticipated, and Hariyama just never saw the light of day that match, unfortunately.
We're going to go ahead and throw it to a quick interview with Anna Prosser and Christopher Kahn to hear more about Christopher Kahn's thought process in the match.
Thanks, guys. I am here backstage with Christopher. And Christopher, you have a great story as a player. So in case the people at home aren't familiar with you, don't know kind of your background in Pokemon, can you give us a brief overview?
Okay, so to begin with, in official Pokemon, I started playing the Pokemon trading card game because that was really all that they had in Australia. So I started out around 2009, played in the junior division. So, over a couple of years, I played kind of locally, and my whole family was into it as well. So we all played together quite a bit. And then 2011 came around, and we decided, okay, we're going to start taking this seriously. We're going to try and go to Worlds this year. So what ended up happening was my brother and I actually met in the finals of our nationals for the senior division, and my sister won the junior division nationals. So we all got a free trip to go to Worlds, and that year I won the trading card game Worlds. So I was really happy about that. That was in the seniors division. So from there, I started to lose a bit of interest in the trading card game because, I felt like I'd already, I was the world champion already, and I always felt like this pressure to play. So I needed to kind of take a break from it. And around that time, actually, they started to get into the Pokemon video game in Australia. And my younger brother actually won the very first national championships we had for that. So then he said, Chris, come on, join the fun. And I started playing. 2016 was the first year I decided to really try hard to get it. I got my Worlds invite last year, and I guess I've just been playing VGC ever since.
So it really runs in your family. What do your parents think of all your success and your siblings' success?
I don't think it's really much about the success. I think it's more about, just seeing us be so passionate about something, and gives us something to talk about and, spend time with each other.
If I'm not mistaken, you're the only representative of Australia at this tournament that's reached the level that you have. Is that right?
At this particular tournament?
Yeah.
So I'm the last remaining Australian, yes.
And just give us a brief overview before we have to send it back to our casters of where you stand and how you're doing in the tournament after that last win.
So having won that, I'm pretty sure that I should be safe to make top 8 of the tournament. because I've got 11 wins and 2 losses. So even if I lose the last game, I should still be in the top 8. But we'll see.
That's great. Well, congratulations on this win and on moving forward in the tournament. We wish you absolutely the best of luck. Thanks for sharing your story. And casters, now it's time to head back to you.
All right, thank you, Anna. Thank you, Christopher, for the words. Apparently, Pokemon runs deep in Christopher's family, and of course, former world champion. Now switching over to the video game side,
Yeah, it's a really incredible story to hear. All the passion that he shares for not only the Pokemon video game, but the trading card game as well as how he's bonded with his siblings. They've all been going to events, all been, having a lot of fun just playing Pokemon together, and it's been something that they had in common, and he's, it's just such a heartwarming story to hear.
Yeah, and he is so close to becoming a North American International Champion with that win. Like he said, he's probably going to be in the top cut of top 8. I think 11 threes will be pretty safe for the top cut, so he must be excited, of course. He's going to have to play one more round and then see who he gets paired up with in the top cut.
Yeah, and should he make it to top cut, he will have a number of more challenging opponents because top cut, the pressure's on. It's win or go home, so it's going to be really exciting to get to that stage of the tournament, and we should be there shortly.
Yeah, we're going to go ahead and take a quick break, and when we return, the final round of Swiss here from the 2017 Pokemon North American International Championships.